guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. My name is Sam Nang, and I just wanted to take a moment and thank you guys for listening to the Flow In, Flow Out podcast. It's been great to have your support, and I want to tell you a little bit more how you can support the community and how we can support you as well too. So, if you like the Flow In, Flow Out podcast, the message that we're putting out, the information, the content, please subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel on Spotify. Please like it. Please share it. Please share an inspiring message. It helps with the algorithm. It helps get the message out to people that need it. So that would be greatly appreciated. Now, if you are in need of more personal development support in those areas of physical fitness, nutrition, mindset, spirituality, anything in that type of area, please book a discovery call with us. We'd love to help you. We'll get some time on the schedule to chat about what your struggles are, how we can help you, and we'd love to support you in that way. And if you are interested in being a part of being a guest on the podcast, please let me know. If you have an inspiring story, you have something that you want to share, if you have a message that resonates that's similar to what we're sharing here on the Flow In, Flow Out podcast, we welcome you to be part of our show. We're super excited where the growth and the community is growing. So we look forward to having you here, and we look forward to working with you. And thank you guys so much for the continued support and the love. And we'll continue to keep putting out the good vibrations out there to help elevate the collective vibrations. And thank you guys so much. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Flow In, Flow Out podcast. I'm your host, Sam Nang Man, lifestyle performance coach, hybrid athlete, and philosopher. And today we got another philosopher on the podcast. Her name is Sara Chevalier, right? Is that how you say your last name? Perfect.
Chevalier. Yeah,
Chevalier?
Chevalier.
Oh, okay. It's French, right? You're from Canada, right?
Yeah,
Perfect.
Quebec.
Yes. So we found each other through the RMT coaching program, or life coaching program. So we became friends on Facebook, and she's a very artistic person, very expressive person. I've seen her writing and content, and I was naturally attracted to it. And I want to read her bio for you guys and then introduce her and give her a warm welcome to the podcast. And we'll start our discussion. It's going to be mainly about authentic branding and expression. So Sara is a spunky AI digital brand mixologist. She's the founder of SE Design Studio and creator of the trademark Lemon AI Aid, right? Is that how you say
I
it?
just said, yeah, lemonade.
Lemonade, with a passion for transforming solopreneurs and online coaches into powerful brand leaders. Sara combines her expertise in human needs and mindset coaching, branding strategy, and digital asset creation to deliver high impact, aligned aesthetics that help her clients stand out and thrive. As someone who's personally journeyed through the challenges of self expression, Sara understands what it means to move through and transform fear, doubt, and uncertainty into confident, authentic visibility in life and work. Her work is deeply inspired by her own transformational experience that took her from being afraid to take up space in her own life to boldly standing for herself and for others who have a heart for impact and growth. Sara is a proud mindset maverick with Celtic roots, drawn in on her rich heritage and life experience, including overcoming mental health struggles from her mother having taken her own life to considering it for herself, to a fiercely nasty separation to connect with others on a heartfelt, vulnerable level. She advocates for personal empowerment through self expression, a deep seated trust in oneself, and believes in the importance of showing up authentically in both business and life. Through her vibrant, playful, and deeply reflective style, Sara has become a trusted partner for coaches and entrepreneurs in life coaching and spiritual spaces, helping them craft cohesive, eye-catching brand asset and imagery that resonates with their audience and support them to gain unshakable confidence in themselves. As the voice behind Achieve Her News, Sara inspires powerful women to break traditional roles and redefine achievement through love and passion. Sara's mission is simple yet profound: to empower her clients to fall in love with their brands, aka themselves, so deeply that they can't help but share their message with the world, boldly, confidently, and authentically. Whether through her keynote speeches, community in the launch box, or her work with solopreneurs, Sara's message is clear: embrace your true essence, love your brand, and let the world see and feel your brilliance. Welcome.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
How
Thank
does it sound
you.
to hear like somebody else reading your bio to you?
Honestly, it's inspiring. I'm like, heck yes, heck
Yeah,
yes,
you
heck
did some work,
yes.
right? Yeah, I had a
It's
gentleman from the RMT coaching. I think his intro was 5 minutes long. He was like, "Bro, you're gonna say every piece of it."
Well, it's interesting too, because if you think, as I said, a lot of what I do now is based on my journey,
Yeah,
that I had to walk through and move through, let the layers fall where they may and the pieces. It's fun to hear that because I'm like, never in my wildest dreams, 4 years ago, would I have even fathomed to be where I am now. It would have
yeah.
been incomprehensible. So, that
So four
alone for
years,
me is kind of like, woohoo.
4 years ago is kind of the start of the big transformation. Is that Yeah, it's similar in my aspect. I have like language and words in my vocabulary that I never thought I would even have, thought of like 4 years ago. I have like spiritual words and uh,
Mm-hmm.
words that I learned from coaching, neuro linguistics, life coaching, therapy that I have gone into, and which has been very a transformative process. So let's start there because the transformation is where really I think the story starts. I mean, of course,
Well,
this
yeah.
here before, but that's where the hero's journey starts.
Yeah, that's what they call the darkest hour, right? When you enter into that cave and wonder if there's a way out. And it's
Yeah,
it's it's so interesting. And like you said, I mean, our story starts. We can look back and see many points along the way where you're like, oh, how did I not see it then, right? Like we have
yeah,
those little whispers that happen. But for me, 4 years ago, 4.5 now, it had probably started earlier than that. I just refused to see the signs. I think like many of us, right? We're chasing the what we think is going to make us happy. And for me being in corporate, it was always that next promotion, that next raise, and then I would get it and be like, well, this didn't make me happy. I have to work harder. I have to give more. And the more I gave of myself in those domains, the more I let everything of who I naturally was, things that I love, fall to the side. It was just
yeah,
that chase. So you could get those small moments of like, oh, I feel something. I feel worthy. I feel, like I'm able to do something. It's like all my confidence and who I was became this facade built around me. And for me, really the moment, it was kind of like a two-step moment because the actual moment where I knew there was a problem was driving home one night from my corporate career. It was the fall. It was late, kind of late afternoon, early evening. So it was just coming up to dusk. And I remember pulling up to this major intersection in Toronto. And the light was red and I looked over and there's an 18-wheel truck coming and my mind actually went into the calculations of what speed I had to collide with it for it to be done. Like I didn't want to risk potentially going in the hospital and because my mother's suicide was like a weird, she did it, but then ended up brain damage, which lasted. She was a vegetable for years and years. And so I had that in my mind. It's like, I don't want that to happen. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. Right. There's the perfectionist. If I'm going to take my life, I'm going to do it right. How stupid is
yeah,
that? And that scared the crap out of me
yeah,
because I was like, I know within my heart that I love life. So I knew there was a real problem. I was like, okay, something's got to give here. Something is very wrong. And realistically, I went home and 6 months passed and I really didn't make any changes. And then the universe stepped in and gave us COVID, which totally
my,
changed. Yeah, totally changed everybody's life. And so I was working from home. We were very fortunate. We still were running the business, but from home. And I think because, you're doing NLP, so we know, right? The reticular activating system, when you start to open up, you start to see things a little differently. And so my mind, I guess in the background was like, Sarah, something needs to change. You need to start looking for a way through, or I didn't even know what I was looking for at that point. I just knew I was miserable. I was like, I couldn't even remember the last time I'd like, when you laugh and you almost pee your pants. Like I hadn't done that in years.
yeah,
And it happened to be a Tony Robbins event that came. It was one of the free ones he had done. And at that point, I was never on social media. I was like, it wasn't relevant to what I did. And I was more on LinkedIn and was business connections and selling. And I saw this thing and it was just like, when you get that little intuitive kick in the arse? And I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Tony Robbins is good at doing that. He's good at
He
getting it.
is.
Like, if you're not feeling like great, you listen to like one of his books or like speeches or anything. It's just almost like an automatic physiology change. Like, oh, it
Yeah.
feels good
And
because he's so
but
powerful.
at that point he wasn't on my radar for
Yeah.
years. I think I had seen one snippet in I don't even know what interview it was, where he was talking about if you sit down and smile like a weirdo, your physiology is going to change. And I remember repeating that to people throughout the years, but that was about my extent of delving into personal development. Honestly, back then I would have thought it was a bunch of hooey. It was
Yeah.
like I
A
was
lot of
brought
people
up
think
with
it
the
is.
idea, get a job, do the things, you want everything everybody else wants. Don't follow your passions and dreams because those aren't financially stable. Um, and so the thing came on, and that was it. That was my hook. I joined, I did the mastery, and then I haven't stopped since then. I mean, I honestly, at this stage, everything I do in the morning, I listen to my Audible. I have to listen to empowering words, whether it be Michael Singer, whether it be Eckhart Tolle, whether it be Wayne Dyer, Joe Dispenza. I mean, the Tao Te Ching, doesn't matter. I have to surround my brain with those ideologies and thoughts, because I realize if I miss even a week, I can
Yeah.
hear the mind chatter start to get a little bit louder. And so that really was the foray where I just, as I said, it was kind of like a multi-step thing. And I didn't realize how much of myself I had lost. I didn't realize just to what extent. And as I said, I'm very grateful for that moment. I'm very grateful, one, that I didn't do anything. But as I said, when my mother had done it, my sister and I had made a pact with each other because it was incredibly painful.
Yeah.
And so I was like, it wasn't even for me at that point. I was like, I can't do this to my sister. I can't hurt her in that way. And so I'm very blessed that that moment happened, because it was like the wake up call. It was that, like, unfortunately, for some reason, many of us as humans need to fall to our knees and be in that dark moment in order to be like, okay, I'm so uncomfortable now. I have to make a change. It'd be nice if we could see it a little bit earlier and take action on it. But that was my epitome moment where, and it's been rough. As I said, I think one of the most interesting things I've learned through this experience is that a lot of times we think that bad things shouldn't happen to us.
Yeah.
And when they do, we get very upset. But the truth is, life happens. It's not personal. Life just happens. And I think beginning to understand is, how do I build myself to be able to move through those moments, to be able to, I mean, I like to say dance with it, but at the same time, depending where you are in your journey, because like you said, honestly, the words that come out of my mouth now, had 4 years ago, I would have, like, some of the people talking like spiritual, I would have held my person around the other way going, oh my God, a lunatic. And now here I am and talking about universe and divine. And I just giggle because I'm like, oh my goodness, I so don't recognize, it's not, I don't mean that. I don't recognize myself with those eyes, but I've never felt more myself
Yeah. More
in this
authentic to
journey.
you. Yeah. I love it. I mean, that's a big transformation process that you went through. Tony Robbins has been a voice in my head for a long time. And during COVID, it was just resonating because it's everybody's, during that time, you're going through a lot of change. You might be losing a lot of stuff, and your own self identity,
Mm-hmm.
losing yourself through those dark times. Like, I've been going through it, and I still experience it too, and that's why
Yeah.
it's what life is, right? I think we
Mm-hmm.
go ups and downs. There's some days that are really good. There's some days that are really bad, but at the end of the day, you talked about the RAS, the reticular activating system. That's part of the brain. When I started activating this and started doing this type of work, it was almost like this is what I dedicate my life to, is personal development. And I love that you share that this is in a way like the stuff that you're listening to. That's you're giving yourself clean thoughts, like
Mm-hmm.
healthy thoughts too. So that's part of like like personal development. And back in the day, people look at it that like it's just like woo woo and like pump you up, mindset, motivation, and stuff. But there's actually like very practical stuff that I use on a daily basis, and I help coach other people too. And like the reticular activating system, it's just like the red car theory where like you go buy the red car and then all you see is red car. Well, there's a transformation too when you want to grow, when there's enough pain, there's enough misalignment in what you want to do and who you want to be. And it doesn't actually have to be clear. It's more of just, I believe, more of who you are as a person and what you want to express. And I loved how you express yourself in your writing and in your AI artistic artwork. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you? Because you're an artist at, I believe, at the like the core, you're a creator, and when you're creating, you feel very confident. You feel very connected to yourself, right? So tell
Yeah,
us a little bit about
very.
that artistic side of yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting. That was also, sometimes they say get out of your own way and let life take its course. Life knows better than you do sometimes. Because really, I took a course in AI strictly to support me to create images to go along with my messages. And so there was a course, and I was like, oh, let me go see what this is all about. I mean, an AI is coming. I realized very early, and before I make any judgments or assumptions, I like to learn.
Yeah,
I don't like to just follow the crowd, or as I said, fear and scarcity are at the leading of most marketing, because it works. But I also
yeah,
believe that it's so important that we make our own informed decisions. So I said, let me see what this is about. I'm going to go take a class, joined a community, and I was just hooked. Like I started actually painting again, which I hadn't done in years.
painting.
Um, and I just started like, and what I loved about it is it showed me where I was so blocked in my imagination. Because when you sit down with AI and you go to make a picture, the first thing that comes to mind is like stuff you've seen, because that's what you know. And yet I would sit there, and I was very lucky to be in communities where we would do like daily challenges. And it was like, wait a second, I have no boundaries. I have no limits. What's possible?
Yeah,
And
I
there
love
was
that.
such a tie into the own journey and the self development journey, because that's really a mentality we can bring to our lives too. And so I just started to have so much fun. And I realized, because when I was in mindset coaching, I was doing it with coaches already. It was, how do you gain that confidence? How do you clarify your message? How do you step into who you are? And I realized through the AI imagery that I'm able to do that on almost a deeper level, because people like, oh yeah, I want some pictures. And yet the transformation, when we move into it and go like, okay, well, what is the essence? What is the brand? What are the colors? How are you portraying yourself? Who are you? It really takes them through some deep questions. And so I was like, when two pieces just suddenly fit together, and the AI and my passion to support people and to be part of what's happening in this world for change, for growth, for the truth, it just seemed to fit so beautifully. And so normally what happens is and it's interesting because I'm so much on the mindset, I forget sometimes to do my own branding to sell stuff, but I have like a vision in my head for the message, and then I go and see like, what can I bring to life? And for myself, what I love to do in addition is, in learning it, I actually work through my emotions sometimes. If
Yeah,
I'm dealing with a situation I'm not sure about, or I sit down and, I was trying to show compassion to my ex-husband on something, and all I could see was this horrible monster in my face. But I was like, wait a second, where's the child behind it? Where's the compassion that I can see him? And so I brought an image like that to life, so that when I'm seeing him in its tentative moments, I want the compassionate heart. I don't want to see the facade or whatever, right? And so it's been really interesting to use it as a tool for myself in my own journey to ignite and push past boundaries and limitations of what our mind is conditioned into. And then also use that and push my clients a bit to do that same thing, because they get stuck in,
yeah.
"Oh, I have to show up a certain way. I have to be a certain thing. I have to be a certain authority. I have to have." No, you don't. You don't. and
You
we
just
get
be
to move
you.
through that.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. You share so much knowledge there and seems so, you had this big awakening of like you know, and AI help with the creativity portion. And AI, I think, yes, I love that how you brought up that fear and scarcity. It is something that we are actually like very conditioned to do
Hmm.
instead of actually going and try to understand it. And I think like for me is I spent some time like I wanted to actually get into writing. I'm not a great writer myself, but I always knew I had some good ideas and good content. I just didn't know how to format things and do the technical stuff of writing. But I knew I had great ideas, and for me, AI, just basically just Chat GPT, has opened up a world of almost like, hey, I don't need to worry about that. I need to worry about the content, and I
Hmm.
could organize it. I could, format it the way I want using the stuff that I'm kind of weak on, and I only use it as a virtual assistant and a ghostwriter. So, but at the end of the day, I think we've talked about this is to be really authentic to your brand and your messaging and everything. So how do you coach people in your coaching when you're doing a little bit of identity work, when you're digging deep and asking who they are and what they want to bring out and what they want to represent? What is kind of like your process with them? Does it take like a long time, or uh, when you're
No,
going through this mindset?
it depends on the person, right? It depends on how clear they are. I think a lot of I do a lot of work with like spiritual and healers and empaths. And so they're already beautiful, delicate souls sometimes. And to really stand up and be like, yo, I know my stuff. Like, join me on this. I've got you. It's hard for them.
Yeah,
And so really it's about clarifying and sitting with the message and what they see themselves to be. And there's different exercises we do because you can pull in and get other people to give you insights. And you can actually use Chat GPT. Remember that post I shared with you? That little
yeah,
blurb about tell me? That was pretty cool. Um, but I think the biggest thing that seems to hold people back in the beginning is the message. Everyone thinks they know their message, but quite often it's again, because of scarcity and whatever, everyone's like, well, I want to speak to everybody. I don't want to niche down. But there's such beauty when we can really say, okay, because I think the confusion is they're like, well, I won't be able to sell any of these other people. That's not true. If you're speaking directly to the person, then others who resonate will jump on board and be like, raise their hand. But if you're trying to speak to everybody, you miss too many people. So the biggest thing when I start with people is really clarifying the message. And when we're clarifying the message, there's exercises I do that's like, well, what is it at this point, like the specific person you're talking to? There's ways where you look back, like, what would you tell your 20-year-old, your 20-year-old younger self? What one of my favorites is if you had only 24 hours left to live, what is the message you would pass on, like your legacy message? And that one was really because a lot of people, like a lot of them will have taken courses and they're very quick and they're very like, go do it on your own after, and most people don't go back, they're just trying to run. But there's such beauty when you really stop and be like, what does my heart want to leave as my legacy? What is that? And when we can clarify that without the fear of who you're selling, without the dollar signs, without all that, like, I'm not big enough, I'm not this, I'm not nothing. Let's just sit and really, what is it that you want to talk about? Because when you make that connection, there's no holding you back anymore. There's no holding
uh,
you back. You'll stand on the rooftops and you won't care if people think you're weird, and you won't care if people don't like you, and because you like, I am speaking to the people I need to speak to and they're going to hear me and they're going to understand, and those are the ones I want to connect with. But you need to really be crystal clear in your heart. What is that message? And then connect that with who you really are. Because if you're trying to show up like somebody else, like you're ahead of where you think you are, or hiding behind and pretending to know things. Like I sucked in the beginning. I kept trying to like show up like I was much further ahead, where in reality I was going through the stages at such a warp speed at one point. I was like, how am I supposed to train anybody? I'm like layers falling off of me left, right, and center. but I was trying to be somebody I wasn't. I was trying to present myself as more of an authority, more of a, what we see on the thing of like who we're supposed to be, right? I think one of my favorite, one of the, I can't remember who said it. I think it might have been Brendan Bouchard, but I'm not 100% sure. In one of the masterminds I was in, and it was like, if you're super proud of your first offer you put out, you've waited way too long. And I love that because it's true, right? Perfectionism is, first of all, and you know, Tony says it all the time, the lowest standard you can put out there. It doesn't exist, so stop trying
Yeah.
to meet it. And this idea of like, you're going to grow, you're going to learn, you're going to adapt, you're going to, like, I embody my message now because I've been living it nonstop for 4 years. I've been sharing it nonstop. I'm so much better now than I was 4 years ago. But 4 years ago, I was trying to be where I am now. That
Yeah.
it's a leap you can't necessarily bypass, but you can be honest about it. You still have a message. You're still ahead of other people. You still have tools. You have processes. You have just your heart, who you are, that you want to share with people. And when we can get crystal clear on that, so that that fire ignites in your belly, there's no stopping. There's no stopping it
Yeah.
anymore.
You're fired up. You're getting me fired up. The identity work on the personal development. I mean, I love that messaging is like the authenticity and the personal branding itself. And then you talk a lot, it's about that transformation process. Once that, it's like a domino effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it stops, sometimes it continues. But once you push that thing and make that little transformation, that little switch in the brain, I think it's the reticular activating system. For me, it was about like 9 years ago. I always use like easy numbers, but I'm like 39. But I started like, I gave up a lot of things and just started reading, podcasting, seminars, book courses, as much as I could do with what I had. And it was all
Mm-hmm.
consumed at that point. And then I just kind of continued it. And it was always growth, growth, growth. No matter like, there are like, for me, it's like the most authentic thing that I could do is tell people about the struggle, because a lot of, for me, is like during branding, or like when I was just kind of like redeveloping myself after going through hard times, right? When you go through hard times, dark times, like I hear some of the same spiritual teachers that you've been studying, like Michael Singer, Joe Dispenza, those guys. Like I had to go into the spiritual side of things to heal myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a transformation process where, like, man, I never knew that I could reach this level of like heightened consciousness, you could say, enlightenment. I see you have a Buddha back there as well too. It's like a higher form of consciousness, but and for me, it's like it's hard sometimes to keep at it, especially when it's like because you go up and down, like
Mm-hmm.
dealing with like health issues and stuff, and that could really spark some big transformation change, like if crisis times when you have to make big decisions on your life. It's always like, no matter how much money, time, things that you investing in yourself, like personal development, personal growth, that doesn't go anywhere. For me, I've always invested time and money into myself, especially uh, more now, even after like I've been doing it for so long. It's like that investment into your own self is so important into like the future and your business as well too, and like your livelihood. Because I think, let's talk a little bit about like how you provide that, or there's some spiritual side to this transformation too, especially when people go to therapy and shadow work. I've done some therapy, and first thing they said, they're like, what is your faith? And I I don't know if I had faith or like believed in God. I just studied a lot of like philosophy, and I always try to live myself like in a good way, and I didn't really believe like, was there a God, was there Jesus? Like, I was studying a lot of stuff, but and then I got deep into like spiritual practice and started incorporating that into some of my coaching as well too, because I think there's a benefit as well too. Can you tell a little bit about that side of your uh
Yeah, we have a lot in common. I mean, I used to, it's really interesting. When I was very young, my mother was not religious at all. She was actually very anti-religious because she came from an incredibly strict religious household. And when I used to kind of muse about life because I've always been the philosopher. And I was always like, if I were to pick a religion, I would pick
That's why we're friends,
Buddhism.
the philosophers.
Yeah, yeah, because it was the most, to me, the most connected because I always had this sense of oneness, right? Like I saved bumblebees from the pool, you know what I mean? I just always had this, and to me, Buddhism was kind of the closest, but I really didn't pay much heed to it. I would have called myself an atheist probably, back in
Mhm.
the day. Um, but as you start to read and as you start to study, and most of those who have gone before us, who have done this journey, at some point they also too have turned to the fact, whether you call it God, whether you call it divine, whether you call it spiritual intervention, it's a connectedness to a much larger possibility of life. I
Mhm.
just finished this morning Michael Singer's The Surrender Experiment, which took me for a whole new layer of like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah,
um,
that word,
and
that word is very like hard to grasp. Surrender, because it's like normally we think surrender as in like I give up, right?
yeah, did you read
You don't
that
want to
book?
give up. Yeah, that was actually a very transformative book. That was what I really got from it, is surrender.
Yeah,
And I
because I mean,
read,
he basically says, get out of life's way, which many of my own teachers were like, well, what would you love? And, it's about preferences. And we think if the world doesn't give us what we want, we've done something wrong, that we're bad people, right? And to me, the idea of leaning in, surrendering, of trusting, one of my coaches that I had for many, many years, a personal coach, and she said a line once and it just stuck with me. And it was like, I trust me more. And I was like, yes, that's what I want. Because the me within the I trust me is being able to put a bit of separation between the chatter. I call it mental chatter. Those
yeah,
voices in your head, the saboteurs. I did like the positive intelligence with Shirzad Shamin, and it's all about the saboteurs and understanding those voices in your head are not yours. And what I love about, I'm going to just circle around for a second because there's a couple things with personal development that I think is misunderstood. One, it's not a one-time fix-all thing. Like you said, we move through layers, and as we get to the next stage, new things come up. We're always growing, right? There's always new wonderful things and hard things. And those are things we've never dealt with before. And so new fears might pop up, new
right,
understandings come up. And what I love about remaining consistent with, whether it be the reading, whether it be courses, whether it be one-on-one coaching, is really, if you look at it, everyone kind of speaks back into the core of the masters from thousands of years ago. But listening to it, and again, as a Tony Robbins, we know repetition is the mother of mastery, right? So
hmm,
I love listening to different people's perspectives on what ends up really being a very similar core. Even if you look at now neuroscience, it's backing what
it's the
many
same.
of
Yeah,
the spiritual, yes, it's the same message, but it lands differently for each of us. So when I listen to
yeah,
all these different speakers, it's a way of me continually practicing and realizing, because I'll hear one person say it and I'll get one thing out of it. Like when I read The Power of Now many, many years ago, it's the book that allowed me to stop being angry at my mother and finally move through that transformation, because I realized it was so, like, for me, I should read it again because the only thing I got out of that book was my ego. And that was a
yeah.
huge aha, because up until then, I had
Ego.
never really thought that so much of who I was and what I was doing was ego driven. But when you can get really radically honest with yourself, and that's really kind of the first step of everything, is just being open to awareness, not trying to even change it, right? Everyone wants to rush and just start noticing what you notice. because that was my biggest thing to be like, oh, wait a second, why did I react like that? What's triggering within me? Why did I have that
Yeah.
automatic defense, right? And so bringing that back into kind of what you said about spirituality and what I do, I don't necessarily, I mean, a lot of people I know already because I work with a lot of healers and spiritual. So the idea of divine, but at the same time, I am very grounded. And so I need to be able to support them to understand that who are they speaking to? Because if you're going to speak like that, you're going to get clients already past a certain level. And if you
Hmm.
want to reach people who are at the beginning of the journey, you can't really speak like that. Like, oh, I'll help you break free of the divine. Like if I'm like where I was 4 years ago in corporate, I would have been like, weirdo, get away from me. Right. Like, and
Yeah.
that's the importance of being able to speak to, even though we want to take them on this journey, even though we know this is where they want to go, how do we connect back to the emotions and sentiments of where they are at that moment? And so I'll bring it in and I can speak to the clients with it, but it really depends on who, again, where they're at. For me, it's my way of living. And like you said, there are a lot of, don't get me wrong, you find me crying my eyes out and on the floor plenty of times. Like this is a lifetime journey. That's what it is.
Growth process. It's a
It
growth
is.
process. I
It
think
is.
every time you're getting ready to grow and face or anything that you're focused on, like healing or repairing, you're focusing on it, and it makes you go inward and deal with those issues. And it's something that you can't really see sometimes. You can't really explain it to everybody, but I know the growth that occurs, people will notice it in the experience and the wisdom that you have and how you could share it and help other people get through it, I
But
think.
then, even if they don't notice it, does it matter?
Yeah.
Does it matter?
Yeah.
And I think that's where we get tripped up, right? Because there are things where my biggest thing now is like, if so, I say something, so I don't agree. Like my sister and I are totally different. And I
Yeah.
have to enact every time we're having a conversation, be like, I don't need her to agree. I don't have to agree with her. And it's letting go in that moment. And I think that's a huge thing because your journey, and yes, it's beautiful if someone does be like, oh, you've changed so much. But I mean, honestly, the amount of times I can bring myself to tears from just this sense of inner peace and just this total body like of just being, it's a feeling that is just so beautiful and something that no matter what anybody else may think or say, I don't have to let it affect me, right? Like, and I think that's the
Yeah.
beauty of moving into it. But it's really hard to move into that phase where, because I think you just touched on something really important. How much of our lives are we trying to do and accomplish to meet the expectations of the eyes of others looking onto us? What if we
Yeah.
actually sat in our own self and said, what am I seeing of myself? What do I think of myself? That's why that saying, I trust me more, was so powerful for me because it was saying, I want to take a seat in my center and to be able to really be that. And when I can help clients see it, whether, again, they don't have to be in the spiritual because, again, neuroscience hits it's just really life. It's being open to look at things with new, fresh perspectives, bring the lens back a little bit. And, if you can take them on that journey, if they're not already there, for myself and what I do, great. But it's not a prerequisite because it's still,
Yeah.
you may not know you need that, but you're probably still living with fear and shame and self judgment. And most people have their biggest problem why they don't show up fully is they're like, what are people going to think? Well,
Yeah. That's a big thing. It's like you being honest with yourself, and because everybody's conditioned to do very similar things, do
hmm
the same job, watch the same thing, same TV shows and everything, and be into the same thing. Because that's when I started bringing, and I like that you said open to more awareness, right? There are certain things that I do enjoy, there's certain things I don't enjoy, and I think part of personal development is really just going to that self reflection, going to that more awareness of what do you enjoy, what makes you healthy, what makes you alive and more authentic, and say your things. I went to a phase where I was like really like hard. core on it about personal development, like hard motivation, and then I softened up through mental, like going through like some hard stuff, and then becoming more empathetic, and changing my coaching style as I aged. And that's the part of it, is like we're continuously learning and growing. And that's the beautiful thing, is that the more you grow, the more you learn, right? You'll be able to step into like different phases of your life. And like I read books once, before, when I first started personal development, I was consuming all the books, and I love books. I don't read as much as I used to, but it's like you could be 30 years old and you could read a book at 40 years old, and the same book, and you could still get a lot from it, because you're not the same person, and
Mm-hmm.
you could continue to grow. And like books, I love books, and I love, like, I always talk about books. When I first started personal development, is such a great tool to like learn. And neuroscience, the one thing that I started to understand when I wanted to like help teach a little bit about spirituality, because I grew up, well, my family is like Buddhists. We were weren't very religious, but we knew of good ethics. We wanted to live a good life, a happy life, a healthy life. And it just, I was more naturally attracted to Buddhism and studying that, because it was more philosophy, and it was also easier to incorporate into my life, because I have a good group of different friends of different religious groups and everything. So it put me in a way where like I was able to get a lot of experience from a lot of other people, resonating with people. And at the end of the day, I think we all have the same hopes, dreams, desires,
Mm-hmm.
just a little bit different. Right? We want to make impact. We want to grow. We want to feel good, and feel like we left something of some kind of like legacy here too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, for me, personal development is something where you can make great impact on somebody about teaching them about life and like growth. What are your thoughts
You
about
can,
that?
absolutely. Well, you can, and I think, I mean, you can do it through personal development. You can do it as a coach, and I think for me, what I try and live, not just speak about, is it doesn't have to be at the level of Mother Teresa, right? Like just in my
Hmm.
local neighborhood, I now live in a very small town because I chose to leave the city. I wanted to be closer to nature and rivers and forests, and yet just in when I walk my dog in the morning, when there are people who pass me, and there's a lot of elderly people in the area, and if they want to stop and chat with me, I stop and chat with them. I open up to them. I listen to them. And that is impact, right? Like we have this thing that it has to be so grandiose, but just being kind to each other. Like you said it right on the nose. We have, as beings, human beings, have more in common than we have that separate us. And we all want to love, we all want to laugh, we all want to care for our family. We all, it's there's very little that actually separates us from the inside of who we are. Do we have different preferences? Do we have different dreams? Yes, sure. But in essence, I don't know. That's why I use laughter a lot because it's something that, I mean, who doesn't love to laugh? I mean, even people who say they don't want to laugh, I think they just need personal development because everybody loves to laugh.
That's good.
Um,
Good for your
I
soul.
think that's what, yeah, it is. And I mean, it fits right back into the physiology, your mind
Yeah.
state shift, it changes everything in a snap and it's fun to do. Um, and so I really try and embody that in every little aspect of my life, to be present, to be giving of my time and who I am. And for me, what was a really good eye opener is because I mean, listen, you're going to run into people who have habits that you don't necessarily agree with, or don't see as
Yeah.
okay. And I think for me, a really big thing was it was about, it's not about the people at that, it's about behaviors, right? And I mean, you shared that you moved through a yucky kind of marital balloon. And so have I. And so for me, that was a really good time to connect to that. When I saw this other person who I've loved for so long and our relationship blew up, I was like, I need to move past seeing the person and seeing the person's behaviors because they're not the same. Right? Like I can still love the core being of a person and not appreciate the behaviors someone is having. That's their journey to take. It's not my responsibility to save or whatever. But that was big for me. And so even locally, like there are a lot of people. I'm an avid animal. Um, my animals are all rescues. I give a lot of time to my animals. My sister runs a rescue. Like I'm a big animal fan. And in a small town, you have people who like chain their dogs up and don't let them really go for a walk. They don't abuse them. That I would not. I would call the animal society, but they don't take them for a walk. So it was an interesting experiment for me to be like, okay, who am I to judge this person? I don't know the whole story. I don't know. I just see a facade. How do I move past that and
Yeah.
see the behaviors? I've been able to influence and share impact with people. Like my neighbor ended up building a fence for his dog so his dogs get to run free after me slowly dripping seeds for about a year. That's impact, right? Like we can step into impact wherever we are in our life, just giving our attention, just hearing people, being present with them, right? We get to be impact, share impact, and leave a legacy. And you may not know about it. I think that's the biggest thing. People want to know. You may never know, and that's okay. And it ties
Yeah.
back to what, if you want to know about branding, people might message like, oh, I didn't get enough likes. It's like, listen, bringing in spirituality. If you feel called to share a message, share it and trust that it will reach who it needs to reach. You don't get to decide or dictate when. It might be in six
Yeah.
months that the person who's on absolutely broken on their knees reads that post and it changes their lives. That's impact. That's trusting
Yeah.
the process.
I love that point that you made is just that it doesn't have to be grandiose. It doesn't have to be start a
No.
podcast or anything, but it and it could be in the day to day of who you interact with in who you talk to at the grocery store, who you work with,
Yeah.
who you interact with in the community, and that is impact. And for me, is like they're going through the growth process. When I first started off my entrepreneurship and journey when I was like in college, that's the real growth for me. Is like I studied Tony Robbins and I loved him and I was pumped up. I was like, I'm gonna be a millionaire, become this entrepreneur. But in the process, no, I'm not a millionaire. Maybe I become a millionaire one day. But in that process of learning and kind of like going for it, I've learned so much about myself. I learned that, you know, millionaire status, money, and everything. It's nice. Like I've been in the best shape of my life. I had money. I've had no kind of almost like every opposite side and being able to see each perspective. And that is one thing that I really love about Buddhism, and it's the first thing that I always study is like right view, and it's to help people from like less judgmental thoughts, and less judgmental thoughts of yourself. Is
Mm-hmm.
that like for when I studied college and I told everybody, hey, I'm gonna be this real estate millionaire or whatever, and then I look back, I'm like, I'm not a real estate millionaire yet, or one that was what I wanted to be in college, and I kind of chased that dream and at the point I was like, maybe that wasn't what I needed to be. And then bringing back to that word of surrender is like you could create this image, create this vision, and the universe could be like, that's not what's intended for you, and you have to be okay with like the detachment of what you wanted in life, right? That's Buddhism. Is a lot of it is detachment. As you get
Mm-hmm.
older, the more stuff that you learn about yourself is more about unlearning a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
I
Unbecoming.
think that's yeah, I think that's where it's like, so for me when I put surrender and detachment together, it's very counterintuitive to a way you think. But I think,
It
as like
is.
for us, yeah.
But if I can cut you off for a second, because detachment, I love detachment. This was one of my
Hmm.
biggest practices that I did. But in the essence of spiritual laws, detachment isn't about just releasing, right? Like if we believe in energy, you have the law of sacrifice, which is one of my favorite laws, and it's letting go of the
Mhm.
lesser so you make room for the greater. And detachment is about allowing that energy, that flow of life to come in and to come out. Because the minute we're like, no, this is the life I want, this is my coffee cup, I can't have any other coffee cup, we block that energy. We start trying to control everything. Whereas being detached is just like, I'm letting this go because I'm making room. I'm tending my garden for what is coming back. And so for me, when we can look at detachment in that essence, it's not about not having. And it's really funny because I mean, there's so many, and that's why this work is so beautiful. There's so many avenues because money mindset is something a lot of people have trouble with. We all want it, and yet a lot of times we self-sabotage in it because many times we're afraid to actually have what we want because, God, what happens once I got it? They're going to find out I didn't deserve it. And yet detachment is really of good and bad. Like you have to be willing that if something beautiful comes in your life, you can't hold on to that either. You have to be letting it go and being like, I'm enjoying it. And that's why being present is so beautiful. Because as
Yeah.
long as it's in my life, I'm going to love it. I'm going to enjoy it. But if the world decides that it's time to move on, so I can be open for whatever next is coming, whether it be the real estate mogul or whatever you're desiring down the road, it will be. And when it comes to money, honestly, if you just stay on your path and you keep sharing and you keep expanding, like the book you want to write, write it. You know what I mean? Like these things are what pave the way. And yet it's the fear that holds us back. And we end up not bringing to life these beautiful blooms that we want to. And so we have this vision that we want all these great things. And yet so many of our actions and behaviors hold us back from what? From stories in our head, not reality.
Yeah. Self sabotage, like you said it.
Mm-hmm.
I think something that uh, I'm sure a lot of people deal with. I deal with it. I'm like,
Oh yeah, I do
I
too.
yeah, you start to tell the story in your head, and you gotta be able to catch these patterns. And I think for me and for anybody in personal development, it's a continuous practice.
Mm-hmm.
Continuous practice of because you get more information each day. You do something, but you also have to have a practice of cleaning it out. And my analogy, I would say, like, you clean your house, you tidy up your house, you tidy up like the dishes and the kitchen and everything. But there's got to be a process for your brain, and neuroscience is a way. I think for me, like, I'm nerd, when it comes to personal development. Something new, I'm in it. It's a new spiritual teacher, new podcast or something. I'm in it and everything. And then I started studying neuroscience, which I love. I'm not so technical in like scientific terms and everything, but that helped explain a lot of things, because
Mm-hmm.
here in America, it's always like you had to have it backed by science and everything. But I already knew, like coming from an Eastern background, is like I knew Buddhism worked, I knew meditation worked, I know yoga works, but how do you explain it to people so the masses do understand that all
Mm-hmm.
our messages that we're saying, your message, my message, we're pretty much the same. We just
Mm-hmm.
package it a little bit different. I love that you use art, AI, I use podcasting and expressing, like, there's, work and ways to like make
Excuse me.
faster and process things. But we're
And
getting
that's
near
what's so
our,
beautiful. We
and
all
that
get
is
to
what is
do it in our
beautiful.
own unique way, right? There isn't one way.
Yeah,
It's the same with branding and marketing. I'll be honest. There isn't one way. There isn't one way.
it isn't. So for you in the future, what does that look like? So where you're at right now in like the next year or like two, with your company, your coaching business, and yourself, Sarah, how do you see yourself growing into this now that you discovered personal development and gone through this big transformation, and you're helping other people? How much impact do you want to make? Uh, you know,
We talk about surrender and detachment, and I'll be honest, I have my vision. As I said, there's a book I want to write. I'm staying on this path. Even as I entered AI, my heart is always about sharing a message of hope, a message of love, especially right now. One, like young people, it kills me to know the mental health of our young people is so fragile. And with AI, as much as I love AI, there are a lot of warning signs that if we're not able to think for ourselves, to move through these stages of personal development, will become tougher for most people. Just even to communicate together. Already people hide behind the screen, and some of the junk that people say to each other, it's just like, why? um,
Yeah.
so this is a field that I think is going to be needed more and more. And so for myself, what do I see is continuing the journey. I mean, I have so many layers left to grow. I
Yeah.
definitely, one of the things that I have myself held back, even though I love writing, is I have like 2 or 3 books in me that I have yet to write. I have started back into it because I get busy and we busy ourselves with bull. I mean, if I really wanted to write it, I could
Um,
have written it. I did stories, right? Like radical self acceptance. I can call BS on myself when I'm BSing myself. Um, and I don't know where the journey will lead. I love what I'm doing right now. And I have, above and beyond like the coaching and the branding within like coaching in branding, I have digital, like a digital empire marketplace where people can come and buy that I'm building slowly. I want to write my book because I personally don't have children. And so I actually had this thought the other day. I was like, this will be my legacy, like how my name will live on. I'm not passing it on through a child, but if I leave a book of that touches anybody, at least maybe my voice will continue on after I'm gone. So that really kind of lit the fire. You know, we talk a lot about finding your why, and it really does
mhm.
work if you can get down to the nitty gritty of it. And so for me, it's just every day being an adventure, and I don't have to dictate how it's going to be.
Yeah.
I just have to be in it.
You're just making it happen and kind of going with the
Mm,
flow. I think that's great. I think having a general idea of what you're thinking about, what you're inspired. And for me personally, writing is something I've been wanting to do. I never thought of myself as a great writer. And then I just started writing. You're just kind of expressing myself. And really, it's a beautiful process. I do have like, it's cool that you have like 3 books, the ideas are already there. Eventually, I'll come. But I can tell you,
hmm
writing, it takes a lot of mental bandwidth. I could tell because it's like so much you want to put on there and how
It
much you
does,
think.
but what if you slowed it down a bit? What if you said 20 minutes, I'm just going to free write and see what comes up? Every day, 20
Yeah.
minutes, that's all I'm going to do to start. Because and if you're okay with me saying this, the thing is we have this such passion and desire. And I've noticed with myself, I tend to sit down and I want to rush through it. I'm like, now I started. Why isn't it finished? And I really had to start thinking, okay, Sarah, slow it down. Take the breath
Yeah.
and give. Like I started doing morning pages just as a journaling process, 3 pages in the morning. And it was really hard when I started to sit down for that long and write. And now it goes faster. But that's how a dream is built, is by the little micro step, right? So if you have a
Yeah.
book in your heart, take 20 minutes and just have fun with it, right? Like get rid of the outcome, get rid of the pressure. Just say, I'm going to have a coffee or a Coke or whatever super drink you drink as a healthy guy. I'm a coffee girl, and
Downstairs.
just,
Energy drinks.
yeah. All right. Well, okay, that'll keep you nice and calm.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, because if it's on your heart someday, then give yourself the gift of awakening that dream.
Yeah.
And it
I
doesn't
love it.
have to,
I
like
love it.
they say, it doesn't have to be huge. It can be 20 minutes a day. And that's for true for anybody doing anything,
I do.
anything.
I do enjoy the writing process because I learned that the creativity process starts actually with writing. The more
Hmm.
wrote, the more stuff that I created, like content or podcasting, more creative ideas just flowed. And I didn't realize I just had that on. I just had a discussion on a podcast about seeing what their create some like one of my guesses creative process was, and she said it was writing for her, and I was like,
Hmm.
I think it's the same for me too, is because you have these thoughts, you have these ideas and stuff, and then when you jot it down, whether it be like notes or anything, that just helps solidify like a neuron connection that, hey, you are a writer. I think one of the limiting beliefs is that I never grew up as a good writer, right? I was always labeled. I struggle. I had learning disabilities in writing and everything, so it was always like a limitation. But I always knew that, I have an interesting story to tell. It's almost like uh, my idea is in the personal development field. I think that's, like you said, it's something that I personally see, you personally see, that people struggle with. I personally struggle with it. I think for me, the reason why I share this message in this podcast, so like working on your mental health, working on personal development, having goals, and fixing your mindset, and doing this personal development work, is that there's awareness to it, more light, more consciousness, so you could help heal yourself. For me, that I'm very inspired by doing that and sharing this message, and also being a guinea pig and talking about it as well too, because like
Hmm.
I'm very open uh with that, and it helps people. And that for me is like one of the big thing is like, if it helps somebody. And I've had like plenty of people come in and they want to talk on the podcast, and I really do enjoy the podcast and the writing experience and the expression as well too. I think the book, like I said, it's gonna come. I don't know exactly when. And that's the one thing about this journey is like,
Detachment, you don't have to.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, that's one of the biggest things that I'm working on is like, okay, you could think and manifest and write and journal and do all this personal development work. Like you could go to like UPW and have it all like put together and everything, but you don't know exactly when it's gonna happen. And you just have to kind of be okay with it. And I think for me is like just being detached more of when it's gonna come. It's gonna come as long as
Hmm.
you just keep at it and everything. But lovely message. Thank you. Do you have anything else you want to share before we you want to end the podcast? I know you have books, you have AI, you have your own personal growth journey. Any message that you want to personally share?
Mm. I think the message that I would share is my heart's passion for anybody who's listening who believes there's more for themselves, to trust it, to lean in. And it's interesting because personal development can be a, a lonely path, because we do become very different thinkers. We do stray from the status quo. And that's hard in and of itself, because quite often you'll talk to people and you bring these messages of love and hope, and they're like, oh my God, you're so Pollyanna. It's like, no, this is really possible. And it's so goddamn worth it. It's so worth it.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your insight. The journey starts and it's never ending. That's the truth of it. That's the joy of it. The honest is like when you start, you want more of it, and there'll be times where there'll be easy ways. There'll be times when it's very tough. But as long as you continue the path, I think the path, of personal development, personal growth. My mission for the podcast is to help elevate collective vibrations. We vibrate together. We share the same message together, and when we do that, we can have other people resonate with the message, or probably go through their own struggles of mental health or difficult challenges faced in life, where they can see that there's a lot of strength that can be gained when we're going through these dark, hard times, the struggle, the dark night of the soul. There's things that I've learned different languages in these last 3 or 4 years, and especially connecting with people that are very like-minded as well too. And I love that you shared the message about the ego, because the ego is so hard to understand. And maybe that's what the book my book is going to be titled. I always have this mantra. It's called the illusion starts with I. Right, we have to figure out what is an illusion, what is real, and that starts with this person right here. And that's my message. And I appreciate you sharing your message as well too. So thank you, and God bless. guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. My name is Sam Nang, and I just wanted to take a moment and thank you guys for listening to the Flow In, Flow Out podcast. It's been great to have your support, and I want to tell you a little bit more how you can support the community and how we can support you as well too. So, if you like the Flow In, Flow Out podcast, the message that we're putting out, the information, the content, please subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel on Spotify. Please like it. Please share it. Please share an inspiring message. It helps with the algorithm. It helps get the message out to people that need it. So that would be greatly appreciated. Now, if you are in need of more personal development support in those areas of physical fitness, nutrition, mindset, spirituality, anything in that type of area, please book a discovery call with us. We'd love to help you. We'll get some time on the schedule to chat about what your struggles are, how we can help you, and we'd love to support you in that way. And if you are interested in being a part of being a guest on the podcast, please let me know. If you have an inspiring story, you have something that you want to share, if you have a message that resonates that's similar to what we're sharing here on the Flow In, Flow Out podcast, we welcome you to be part of our show. We're super excited where the growth and the community is growing. So we look forward to having you here, and we look forward to working with you. And thank you guys so much for the continued support and the love. And we'll continue to keep putting out the good vibrations out there to help elevate the collective vibrations. And thank you guys so much.